Hey guys, we are back at it with the Nissan NASCAR S14. I'll show you guys a couple things that we're doing. We're welding up, it's over here, we're welding up a box for the fuel tank. We're doing a lot of other stuff. You can see the dashboard over there. It's a little bit of a mess in the shop. It's pretty busy. And I'll show you guys a couple things that we're doing right now in this car. So it is pretty difficult if you have a V8 because you have the manifolds on both sides to run the coolant lines through the car. Obviously this whole end running the brake lines through there and some other stuff, some electronics that need to go behind the dash, so it's better to use that side. So I always try to keep certain sides separated. So the driver's side over here, we're going to be using that for electronics and like brake things and the throttle cable and obviously the steering column. And we're going to be having the coolant on that side, which is not super easy on the S chassis because you have the manifolds over there, and as you can see, we keep them as wide as possible. So this is the spot we're going to be going to. It's going to end up over here, coming out of the firewall, and we're going to be putting like the ECU and everything in this area. And the dashboard is going to be a two-piece. As you can see, I already made a rough like indication over there. So this piece is going to come out completely, so you can reach the ECU and all kinds of things. On my cars I like to have them all in sight, but in this case we're going to obscure them by the dash, and the 20s are going to come down there. Dash 20s are going to follow all the way through, and they're going to go to the remote radiator. Yeah, and this is the box that we made that's going to take the gas tank. So I marked it over here. The red lines is where we're going to be removing some of the finish off the metal so we can weld it easier. As you can see, this is all quite intricate work on the brake, so we'll end up with a nice it's a little bit difficult to film and keep the thing, so we're going to end up with a nice pattern over there where we can put the lid on. Over here you can see it pretty well, so that's what it's going to look like, and we're going to put a lid on there. So we're going to weld that up, and then we're going to mark it out in the car and see where we have to cut the car. That's what it ends up looking like. It's of course not fixed yet into the final position. It's hovering above it a little bit, but that's basically what it's going to be. You don't really have a lot of choice because you want to be able to take the valve cover off, especially on an engine like this where you got to check the lash a lot, and you want to stay away from the headers, obviously. Yeah, so this is where you're going, and obviously on the inside you also gotta take a look. And the way we make these things is also to hold the wrench next to it to see if we can easily reach it with a wrench. And that is the wrench for the Dash 20. So when we build these cars, we make sure that we can reach everything with a wrench, and the wrench will still go on there when the couplers are installed. That's basically what it's going to be like. So when we're welding this tank, we're going to be marking out what we're doing first over here. So you start by using 2 centimeter stripes with 6 centimeter in between, and you got to remove all the material on the outside of the steel, because otherwise it's going to contaminate your weld. So you do the same thing on the underside, obviously, and make sure that it's a nice evenly spaced thing. You don't want to weld all these things completely because then it's just gonna warp like crazy, and it's just to contain the tank. It doesn't have to be fluid tight or anything. We're still gonna be putting some sealant on there, but for now we're just gonna weld it together real quick. So we got this guy all welded up, turned into a nice and sturdy box for our tank. And obviously we still got to make a lid, but now it's like nice and sturdy so we can fit it in the back of the car. It seems really easy, but this whole part of the rear, like as you can see over there, we kind of like sketched it a little bit to see how far we could go. There's definitely not going to be easy to cut over there. That's obviously where you see that red line is pretty straightforward, but like over there, it's gonna protrude into the back stay, which is not gonna be super easy to cut, but we have a little trick for that. So that's basically how it's gonna sit. As you can see there, we have the red lines already. Over here, it's a lot more difficult to see where it's gonna go. That's where the same kind of style box is gonna come for the dry sump system. And the tanks box, we're gonna sink in as far as we can. We got to see how far we can sink that in, because it's obviously going to have a quick change. So I'm thinking basically there at the top of that frame rail. Good thing we make the subframes for the quick change here ourselves, so that should be pretty easy to find out. As you can see, the floor is not very straight, and as you guys know, I always say straighten everything out. Make sure that everything you do is going to be straight. And here you can also see some of the welds we did prior to that car, like right in that corner where these two panels meet. It's a pretty nice chassis. There's no rust or anything on this car. It's a little dirty. We made that like 2 or 3 years ago. Everything looks kind of nice with it. Yeah, so that's how it's gonna sit in that car. We have a nice little tool to help us get that line right, which is this laser, which is really helpful, because as you can see, it's very, very difficult to draw the line. And here, yeah, you can totally tell where you got to make that cut. So it's pretty nice. Now, I like to use a bunch of different tools for this stuff. This is a really nice clean cutting saw that doesn't make so much of a mess, but you obviously have to use the angle grinder, and this guy is one of my favorite tools. I call it a speed file, and it's always a good idea to remove some material already a rough part, like what I threw on the floor over there. Just take that center section out, and the reason why we do that is otherwise you'll have a really big heavy piece that's going to be flopping around when you're using that saw over there. It's just going to oscillate like crazy, so you don't want that. So you just cut out like just roughly the inner shape, and then the edges are going to be a lot nicer. They're fucked up a little bit with pendles, like it's just a straight cut, so that's pretty easy. And there you can see the line that we made with the laser. So yeah, let's see if we can actually get this done nice and tidy. It's almost going in. There's like a little piece over there that's grabbing it a little bit. Overall, the rest looks pretty good. Obviously, you want this stuff to, you know, if it fits the first time, you probably cut it too large. Over there, there's also a small piece that we still need to clearance a little bit. But yeah, overall, it's good. We're going to see how far we can drop this thing in. And as you can see, it's all very, very close. So here, it's super close for the lid to still go on. And over here, same thing. So the dash 20 lines for the rear radiator are going to come through here at some point. So we need to run a little bit of room over there. So they're going to come through basically there. You can see the holes in the firewall. They're going to go over the floor, and then they're going to come through here and to the radiator over here. So we got this thing in. I'm pretty happy with it. This is what I said about the shape being really weird, because it is very weird over here. You'd think that there's just a straight line, but it's not. And yeah, it's a pretty big tub. It's actually too big for what tank we're running, but that's going to be totally fine. Over here, we need to obviously close that off, because that's it doesn't sit straight yet. Like, it needs to be leveled, obviously. But this tank is a lot smaller than this casing, but I always like to keep these casings a lot bigger, so in case we can fit some more stuff in there. Obviously, you need to have a filler neck and all those things. And the whole reason that we're doing this is because I don't really like the pickup truck look, although I don't want to offend anybody like Piotr and all those guys, or my buddy Ben Hobson that run that with the cutoff of the, like, they basically make a firewall over here and all your stuff sits over there, which I just don't like the look. Sorry guys. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a funnel over here for the radiator that's going to go in the windscreen or in the rear glass, and this is going to snake out probably over here. I'm going to have the fill tube over there, so we have a very minimal opening in that rear glass. It's basically going to be opened where you can see it over here. That's the maximum opening size that I want to do. I obviously still got to sketch it out, but I really like that the car retains its silhouette from the rear. To me, that's super important. And you guys that may know, you followed me maybe when I built the M50 turbo car, which is a rear radiator car, and then we also that just has a completely closed off rear glass. So I really like that. Obviously it's to each their own, but yeah, that's basically how it's going to sit, and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like if we have the tank in there. But yeah, so this is the idea, to have this nicely fitting over here. And if we look under the car, this is about as far as it goes, obviously, because there we're meeting the frame rails. That's where the subframe is going to sit. I have a bunch of these S-chassis subframes always at hand. And yeah, so that quick change needs to sit up like really close to where that tank is sitting. So I think this is a really nice position. As you can see over there, it's flush with the frame rails, and yeah, so you keep the center of gravity low. And all these pro cars, it's just a game of packaging. It's pretty difficult to get it all right. Yeah, there you can see a little bit of sunlight. It's the original hole where the tank filler goes through, but that's how we're gonna run it. And there you can see the tank, so it sits a lot lower than the box is, but then we can probably go out over here with the fill neck. At least that's what I'm hoping, and then I'm going to come through here and have it fill in the rear window. I'm kind of happy with how it sits. It's nice. And yeah, so yeah, we're dropping this down. If you look at it, it's maybe like if we would have set it up there, it would have, this is basically the extra depth that we're gaining. So we're lowering the center of gravity by probably 8 centimeters or 2.5 inches or something like that. To me, that's super important. It's a whole thing these days that people put the tanks between the rear domes. I like to have my tank over here, obviously, on my pro cars. As you guys know, they're all sitting there because it has a much lower center of gravity, and my cars have almost no float. So I set up the suspension to have 0 float, and then having that tank sit over here in the rear. If you fill it up all the way, it's just another 40 kilos, and it can help it float a little bit more if I want it to. Especially on initiation, it's kind of nice to go to angle because you're on pretty high speed. Makes the car rotate a little bit slower, so you can be a little bit more aggressive, because it's basically like extra weight hanging off the back that needs to move. So the further you move it back, the more difficult it is for the car to rotate. But sometimes you don't want it to rotate too soon. You want it to kind of like hang out. It's kind of difficult to understand, kind of difficult to explain, but on this car we're doing it this way. We're leaving the tank in between the rear suspension turrets, and let's see how that goes.